Rage boiled within her as she stormed across the manicured lawn, the sound of her stilettos clicking against the pavement. Karen gripped the cease and desist order, her knuckles turning white. How dare they defy the HOA's rules? She would put an end to this madness once and for all. Reaching the garage, she pounded on the door. "Open up. I know you're in there," her voice dripped with contempt. The garage door slowly creaked upward, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered man. He eyed Karen warily, his expression unreadable. "What do you want, Karen?" he asked, his tone laced with annoyance. "What do I want?" Karen scoffed. "I want you to remove this monstrosity you call a vehicle from your garage immediately." She thrust the cease and desist order in his face. "It violates our community guidelines, and I won't stand for it." The man leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms over his chest. "I'm not moving my car. It's perfectly within regulations." Karen's face reddened. "That's where you're wrong, mister. This eyesore of a vehicle is completely unacceptable. I demand you remove it at once. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to do that." The man's voice was calm, but his eyes narrowed dangerously. "Oh, we'll see about that." Karen turned on her heel, her heels clicking furiously as she stormed back toward her own immaculate home. "You'll be hearing from our lawyers." As she reached her front door, Karen paused, a sinister grin spreading across her face. "We'll see who comes out on top in this little battle." The next morning, Karen was waiting on her porch, arms crossed, as the community's tow truck pulled up in front of the offending vehicle. The driver knocked on the garage door, but there was no answer. Shrugging, the tow truck operator attached the vehicle to his rig and began to drag it away. Karen watched with a triumphant smile, certain of her victory. But as the tow truck rounded the corner, Karen's smile faltered. The garage door was open, revealing row after row of identical vehicles, all neatly parked and gleaming in the morning sun. The tow truck driver came to a halt, his face etched with confusion. "Oh, ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. This isn't the only vehicle here." Karen's mouth hung open as she stared in disbelief. What is the meaning of this?" The man stepped out of the tow truck, scratching his head. "Well, ma'am, it looks like this entire block belongs to the same owner. There are, quite a few vehicles here." Karen's mind raced as she tried to process this information. Slowly, she turned and marched back to her own home, slamming the door behind her. Inside, she paced the floor, her phone clutched in her hand. Frantically, she dialed the HOA president's number. "Linda, we have a situation," she said, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. That asterisk man asterisk in the garage? He owns the entire block. All of the vehicles are his." Linda's voice on the other end of the line was calm, but Karen could detect a hint of unease. "Well, that certainly complicates things. Have you tried speaking with him directly?" "Speak with him?" Karen scoffed. "I've already tried that, and he refused to cooperate. He's defying the HOA rules, and I won't stand for it." "I see." Linda's voice was thoughtful. "Well, let's not jump to any conclusions. Perhaps we can schedule a meeting with the homeowner and try to find a reasonable solution." Karen gripped the phone tighter, her knuckles turning white. A asterisk reasonable asterisk solution. "Linda, this is war, and I intend to win." The next morning, Karen stood on her porch, her eyes narrowed as she watched the man across the street emerge from his garage. He carried a large cardboard box, which he loaded into the back of his truck. Seizing the opportunity, Karen hurried across the street, her stilettos clicking against the pavement. "Just where do you think you're going?" she demanded, planting herself in front of the truck. The man paused, eyeing her warily. "I'm heading to the storage unit. Is there a problem?" Karen lifted her chin defiantly. "As a matter of fact, there is a problem. This entire block belongs to you, doesn't it?" The man nodded slowly. Yes, that's correct. I own all the properties on this street. Then you have no business leaving this neighborhood, Karen declared. You're in violation of the HOA bylaws, and I won't allow it. The man's brow furrowed. I'm not sure I understand. What exactly am I in violation of? Karen thrust the cease and desist order in his face. This. Your monstrous vehicle is an eyesore, and it has to go. And now that I know you own this entire block, you're not going anywhere until you've rectified this situation. The man stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a grin spread across his face. You know, Karen, I've been meaning to have a chat with you. He leaned against the truck, folding his arms across his chest. You see, I've been observing the way you and the other members of the HOA have been treating the residents of this community. It's quite troubling, to say the least. Karen's eyes narrowed. I don't know what you're talking about. We're simply upholding the community standards that everyone agreed to when they moved in. Is that so? The man arched a brow. Because from where I'm standing, it looks more like a bunch of entitled busybodies trying to micromanage every aspect of our neighbors' lives. He shook his head. It's got to stop, Karen. This neighborhood belongs to all of us, not just the HOA. Karen's face flushed with outrage. How dare you? We are simply trying to maintain the value of our properties and ensure that everyone adheres to the rules. If you have a problem with that, then you're welcome to leave. The man chuckled. Oh, I'm not going anywhere, Karen. In fact, I think it's time for a little change around here. He pushed himself off the truck and started to walk away, pausing only to throw a final remark over his shoulder. You'd better watch your back, Karen. This is war, and I don't plan on losing. As the man disappeared into his garage, Karen stood there, her mind racing. What did he mean by that? What kind of change was he planning? And how dare he challenge the authority of the HOA? Gripping the cease and desist order tightly, Karen stormed back to her house, her mind already whirring with plans to put this upstart in his place. This was her neighborhood, and she would be damned if she let anyone, least of all this arrogant man, take it away from her. Karen paced back and forth in her living room, her mind racing with plans to take down the infuriating man across the street. She couldn't believe he had the audacity to challenge the authority of the HOA, let alone own the entire block. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Hurrying to her computer, she began furiously typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard. If he wanted to play dirty, then she would give him a taste of his own medicine. Within an hour, Karen had compiled a thick dossier, filled with every possible infraction the man had committed, from noise violations to unsightly property maintenance. With a triumphant smile, she gathered the documents and headed to the HOA president's house. Linda greeted her at the door, her face etched with concern. Karen, what's going on? You sounded quite agitated on the phone. Linda, we have a serious problem on our hands, Karen declared, thrusting the dossier into the older woman's hands. This man across the street, the one who owns the entire block. He's been flagrantly violating the HOA bylaws, and I have the proof to back it up. Linda flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing with each passing moment. These are some quite serious allegations, Karen. Are you sure all of this is accurate? Of course I'm sure. Karen huffed indignantly. I've been keeping a close eye on that man and his activities, and I can assure you, he's been nothing but a thorn in our side. Linda sighed heavily. Well, this certainly complicates things. I'll need to review this information thoroughly before we can take any action. Action. Karen's eyes gleamed with triumph. Linda, we need to take action immediately. This man is a threat to our entire community, and he needs to be stopped before he causes any more damage. Linda held up a hand, her expression stern. Now, Karen, let's not jump to any conclusions. I understand you're upset, but we need to approach this situation with caution and diplomacy. We don't want to escalate things unnecessarily. Karen scoffed. Diplomacy. Linda, this man is clearly trying to undermine our authority. We need to hit him where it hurts, in his pocketbook. I say we fine him for every single violation, and if he refuses to pay, we take him to court. Linda frowned. I'm not sure that's the best course of action, Karen. We need to consider the potential ramifications of such a heavy-handed approach. Ramifications. Karen's voice dripped with disdain. The only ramification I care about is getting this man to fall in line and respect the rules of our community. If he won't do it willingly, then we'll make him do it. Linda sighed heavily. Very well, Karen. I'll review the information you've provided, and we'll discuss it at the next HOA meeting. But I must insist that we approach this situation with caution and professionalism. As Karen left Linda's house, a triumphant grin spread across her face. She knew that with the evidence she had gathered, there was no way the HOA could ignore the violations. This was her chance to finally put that arrogant man in his place and restore order to her beloved neighborhood. The next HOA meeting was a tense affair, with Karen practically vibrating with anticipation as Linda presented the dossier of violations against the man across the street. As you can see, the evidence is quite compelling, Linda said, her brow furrowed. This individual has consistently flouted the rules and regulations of our community, and his actions pose a serious threat to the overall property values and quality of life here. One by one, the HOA board members flipped through the pages, their expressions growing increasingly grave. Karen sat back, a smug smile plastered on her face. This was it, her moment of triumph. So what do we do? Asked one of the board members, a concerned frown on her face. Linda cleared her throat. Well, the obvious solution would be to levy a series of fines against the homeowner, starting with the most egregious violations and escalating from there. Karen leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. Excellent. And if he refuses to pay? Linda hesitated, her gaze darting around the room. Well, in that case, we would have no choice but to pursue legal action. The board members murmured amongst themselves, some nodding in agreement, others looking uneasy. I don't know, Linda, one of the members said, her voice laced with uncertainty. Suing a homeowner seems like a rather drastic measure, don't you think? Especially one who owns the entire block. Karen scoffed. Drastic. This man is a menace to our community, and he needs to be stopped. If he won't comply with the rules, then we have no choice but to take him to court. The board member frowned. But what if he decides to fight back? We could end up in a protracted legal battle that could cost us a small fortune. Linda raised a hand, silencing the growing murmurs. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We need to approach this situation with caution and do our due diligence. I suggest we start by attempting to negotiate with the homeowner directly, see if we can come to a reasonable compromise. Karen's face twisted with outrage. Compromise? Linda, this man has made it clear that he has no intention of cooperating. We need to take a firm stance and show him that we mean business. The board members exchanged uncertain glances, and Linda let out a weary sigh. I understand your concerns, Karen, but I believe we need to exhaust all other options before resorting to legal action. We don't want to risk alienating the rest of the community or setting a precedent that could come back to haunt us. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but the sound of the front door opening cut her off. All eyes turned toward the newcomer, and Karen felt her blood run cold. There, standing in the doorway, was the man from across the street, a confident smirk on his face. Hello, everyone, he said, his voice dripping with amusement. I believe we have some matters to discuss. The room fell silent as the man strode into the HOA meeting, his presence commanding the attention of everyone present. Karen's face flushed with a mixture of anger and trepidation, while the other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. What is the meaning of this? Linda asked, her voice wavering slightly. The man smiled, his eyes glinting with a hint of mischief. I'm here to discuss the, shall we say, concerns that have been raised about my property and my activities within this community. Karen leaned forward, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. We have plenty of concerns, mister. Your blatant disregard for the HOA bylaws, your refusal to comply with our directives, it's all unacceptable. The man chuckled, seemingly unfazed by Karen's outburst. I'm afraid you're mistaken, Karen. I've been nothing but a model homeowner, following all the rules and regulations to the letter. Linda frowned, her brow furrowed in confusion. But we have evidence of numerous violations, noise complaints, improper maintenance, and even the matter of your, unusual vehicle. The man raised a hand, silencing her. Oh, I'm well aware of the concerns you've raised. But I can assure you, every single one of those allegations is either completely unfounded or has been addressed to the best of my ability. Karen's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. We have the documentation to prove it. You're trying to undermine our authority, and we won't stand for it. The man leaned back in his chair, his expression calm and collected. I understand your frustration, Karen, but the fact is, I'm a law-abiding citizen who happens to have a unique set of circumstances, and I'm here today to propose a solution that I believe will benefit us all. Linda's brow furrowed. A solution? What do you have in mind? The man folded his hands on the table, his gaze sweeping across the room. As you've no doubt discovered, I own the entire block that my property is situated on. And I've been thinking about ways to, shall we say, improve the overall quality of life for the residents here. Karen scoffed. Improve the quality of life? You've been nothing but a thorn in our side. Why should we trust anything you have to say? The man's expression hardened. Because, Karen, whether you like it or not, I hold the power here. And I'm willing to use that power to benefit the entire community, but only if you're willing to work with me. Linda held up a hand, silencing Karen's retort. All right, let's hear you out. What exactly do you have in mind? The man leaned forward, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. Well, for starters, I'd like to propose a complete overhaul of the HOA's rules and regulations. I believe they're outdated and overly restrictive, and I have some ideas on how we can modernize them to better serve the needs of our residents. Karen's eyes widened in horror, but before she could speak, the man continued, and as for the matter of my unusual vehicle, I'd be more than happy to work with the HOA to find a solution that everyone can live with. Linda nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. That sounds reasonable. But what do you want in return? The man's smile widened. Simple, really. I want a seat on the HOA board, and I want to be able to veto any decisions that I deem to be detrimental to the community. Karen's face twisted with outrage as the man's proposal sank in. Absolutely not, she spat. We can't just let you waltz in here and take over the HOA. This is our community, not yours. Linda raised a hand, silencing Karen's tirade. Now, let's not be too hasty here. I think we should at least consider the man's offer. Karen gaped at her, her eyes wide with disbelief. Consider it? Linda, this is madness. He's trying to subvert our authority, and you're just going to let him. The man leaned back in his chair, an amused smile playing on his lips. I understand your concerns, Karen, but the reality is, I hold a significant amount of power in this community, and I'm willing to use it to benefit everyone. Linda nodded slowly. That's a fair point. And if what you're proposing could truly improve the quality of life for our residents, then it's something we should at least explore. Karen scowled, her arms crossed over her chest. I don't like this. It feels like we're being held hostage. That's not the case at all, Karen, the man said, his voice calm and even. I'm simply offering a mutually beneficial arrangement. You get to retain your positions on the HOA board, and in return, I get a seat at the table and a say in the decision-making process. Linda nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's an interesting proposal, I'll give you that. But what exactly do you have in mind for these rule changes you mentioned? The man leaned forward, his gaze sweeping across the room. Well, for starters, I'd like to see a relaxation of the restrictions on exterior home modifications. I know many of our residents would love the freedom to customize their homes to their own tastes. Karen snorted. Customize? You mean let them turn their homes into eyesores, you mean? The man's eyes narrowed. I understand your concern, Karen. But I believe that with the right guidelines in place, we can strike a balance between aesthetic appeal and individual expression. Linda nodded, her expression contemplative. That's an interesting idea. What else did you have in mind? The man ticked off items on his fingers. Relaxed noise ordinances, more lenient pet policies, and a streamlined approval process for hosting community events. I want to create an environment where our residents feel empowered to enjoy their homes and their neighborhoods. Karen scoffed. And what about the issue of your vehicle? Are you going to promise to get rid of that monstrosity? The man chuckled. Yes, the infamous vehicle. Well, I'm willing to work with the HOA to find a compromise. Perhaps a designated parking area or some other solution that satisfies everyone's concerns. Linda nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. Well, this all sounds very reasonable, I must say. I think it's worthy of further discussion. Karen's face flushed with outrage. You can't be serious, Linda. You're actually considering handing over control of the HOA to this _interloper_. The man's expression hardened. I assure you, Karen, I have the best interests of this community at heart. And if you're not willing to work with me, then I'll be forced to take other measures. Karen's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? The man's gaze was unwavering. It's a promise. The tension in the room was palpable as Karen and the man stared each other down, their expressions unyielding. Linda cleared her throat, her voice wavering slightly. Well, this certainly is a unique situation. I think we all need some time to consider the implications of this proposal. Karen shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. There's nothing to consider, Linda. This man is trying to bulldoze his way into our community, and we can't let him. The man leaned back in his chair, his gaze calm and level. I'm simply offering a solution that benefits everyone, Karen. But if you're not willing to work with me, then I'll be forced to take matters into my own hands. Karen's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? The man's lips curled into a faint smile. Not at all. I'm merely stating the facts. You see, I own this entire block, and I have the power to make changes whether you like it or not. Linda held up a hand, her expression stern. Now let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We need to approach this situation with caution and professionalism. Karen whirled on her, her face flushed with anger. Professionalism? Linda, this man is trying to take over our community, and you're just letting him. Linda sighed heavily. I understand your concerns, Karen, but we need to consider all the options. This proposal could actually benefit the residents, and we can't ignore that. Karen's gaze swept across the room, her eyes pleading. But you can't be seriously considering this. He's trying to subvert our authority, and you're just going to let him. The other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their expressions a mix of uncertainty and resignation. The man leaned forward, his voice calm and measured. Look, I understand that this is a difficult decision for you all. But I truly believe that my proposal is in the best interest of this community. And if you're not willing to work with me, then I'll be forced to take matters into my own hands. Karen's eyes widened in horror. What do you mean by that? The man's expression hardened. Well, let's just say that I have the resources and the means to make some significant changes around here. And if you continue to resist, then you'll leave me no choice but to take drastic action. Linda's brow furrowed. Drastic action? What are you implying? The man shrugged, his gaze sweeping across the room. I'm simply stating the facts, Linda. I own this entire block, and I have the power to do whatever I see fit. If you're not willing to work with me, then you can expect some unexpected changes in the near future. Karen's face twisted with outrage. You can't do this. This is our community, not yours. The man's lips curled into a sardonic smile. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Karen. This is my community now, and I'll do whatever it takes to ensure that it's run the way I see fit. Linda held up a hand, her expression grim. All right, let's take a break and reconvene in a few days. I think we all need some time to process this. As the board members filed out of the room, Karen hung back, her eyes smoldering with rage. She wasn't about to let this man take over her community without a fight. Over the next few days, the tension in the neighborhood was palpable. Karen spent hours poring over the HOA bylaws, searching for any legal loopholes or technicalities she could use to block the man's proposal. Meanwhile, the other board members seemed torn between the prospect of the man's generous offer and the fear of what might happen if they refused. Finally, the day of the next HOA meeting arrived, and Karen was determined to make her stand. As the meeting commenced, Linda cleared her throat, her expression grave. All right, everyone, let's get started. As you all know, we have a rather unique situation on our hands. Karen shot to her feet, her eyes blazing. Unique? Linda, this man is trying to take over our community, and we can't let him. The man raised a hand, his expression calm. Now, Karen, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm simply offering a solution that I believe will benefit us all. Karen scoffed. Benefit us all? You're trying to subvert our authority and turn this place into your own personal playground. Linda held up a hand, silencing Karen's tirade. Look, we've all had time to think about this, and I think it's clear that there are valid concerns on both sides. One of the board members spoke up, her voice hesitant. I have to say, the idea of relaxing some of the rules does sound appealing. I mean, don't we all want to be able to enjoy our homes the way we want to? Karen glared at her, her lips thinning to a tight line. So you're just going to roll over and let this man take control? What happened to upholding the values of this community? The man leaned forward, his gaze level. I understand your concerns, Karen, but I'm not trying to take control. I simply want to work with the HOA to create a community that works for everyone. Karen shook her head vehemently. No, I won't accept that. This is our community, not yours, and we won't let you dictate the rules. Linda sighed heavily. Look, Karen, I know this is a difficult decision, but we have to consider the potential benefits of the man's proposal. Karen's eyes narrowed. Benefits? What about the risks? What if he decides to change things up even more? Huh. What then? The man's expression hardened. Then you'll have no choice but to accept it. I own this entire block, and I have the power to make whatever changes I see fit. Karen's face flushed with fury. You can't do that. We won't let you. The man leaned back in his chair, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. Oh, but I can, Karen, and I will if you continue to resist. Linda raised a hand, her expression pleading. Let's not jump to any conclusions here. I think we need to take a step back and really think about this. Karen turned to her, her eyes filled with desperation. Linda, you can't be serious. You're going to let him walk all over us. Linda's expression was pained. I don't know, Karen. I really don't know what to do. The man's gaze swept across the room, his lips curling into a triumphant smile. Well, then I think we have our answer. It's time to make some changes around here. As the board members exchanged uneasy glances, Karen felt a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. This was a battle she was quickly losing, and she knew it, but she wasn't about to give up without a fight. This was war, and she was determined to win.